Good evening. Today is the third day of December 2015, and we continue with our explorations in Savitri. Book 2, Canto 2, The Kingdom of Subtle Matter. As always, I begin with some words of Sri Aurobindo on Savitri. A Sadak wrote to him that Savitri was going to be supramental poetry. And he writes back, "Don't make prophecies. How do you know that Savitri is or is going to be supramental poetry? It is not, in fact. It is only an attempt to render into poetry a symbol of things occult and spiritual." That was in 1933. In 1934, he writes, "What you write about your inspiration is very interesting. There is no invariable how, except that I receive from above my head and receive changes and corrections from above without any initiation by myself or labor of the brain. Even if I change 100 times, the mind does not work at that. It only receives. Formerly, it used not to be so. The mind was always laboring at the stuff of an unshaped formation. The poems come as a stream, beginning at the first line and ending at the last. Only some remain with one or two changes. Others have to be recast if the first inspiration was an inferior one. Savitri is a work by itself, unlike all the others. I made some 8 or 10 recasts of it originally under the old insufficient inspiration. Afterwards, I am altogether rewriting it, concentrating on the first book and working on it over and over again with the hope that every line may be of a perfect perfection." And then he has a dash. "But I have hardly any time now for such work." 1934. As always, we are grateful to have Alok Bhai with us. And when we ended our last session, I had asked you if you could say something on the subtle physical envelope.
Yes. But before we enter into that, two things which I thought with regard to Sri Aurobindo's letter. First is about the supramental poetry and the supramental expression. When Mother was asked about it, not with regard to Savitri, but in general, the Mother said the human language cannot express the supramental consciousness. It's a fundamental inability. And the reason is that in the supramental vision, everything is simultaneous. But language by its nature is successive. And one simple example we can take just to get a glimpse of what it would be. When we enter this room, we see everything together. But if I have to describe, I have to perforce describe few things in the beginning and then next and then next. Because that's how my mind can, try to recreate the image. And this is just about a physical seeing. In the supramental, it's not just a physical seeing, but a seeing at different levels and their connections, their interrelations and everything together, the possibilities, the probabilities. So it's an inadequacy of the human language. And that's where the next letter comes in, that it's a play between the inspiration and the instruments which have to adapt to it. And Sri Aurobindo says that the inferior planes are not as accommodating as that. In one of his letters to Nirod Baran, he says why you have to take so much time to write Savitri.
Right.
And in that context, he says that the inferior planes don't adapt like that. The human body, the brain, all these instruments, until they are supramentalized, even when the inspiration comes, it will invariably, in matter, it gets lost to an extent. And then it gives its own hue, its own color. And what Sri Aurobindo means by perfect perfection is that he is aware that it ought to be like this. He is aware of that perfect perfection which he has seen and experienced. But in expression, he wants to bring it. And that we see repeatedly in Savitri because, as I was saying, I think last time, that the same thing which people see, because very often people also say, okay, ultimately there is the one who is infinite. This is known to all yogis. So what is new about what Sri Aurobindo is saying? Well, there is the one, but this one can be seen through several layers. And depending on the layer that from which we experience the one, we also create an understanding about our relation with the world. For instance, we may see the one as cut off and distinct from the world and creation, because this creation is ever changing. From the mind, it appears like that. Through the mental prism, when we see the one, we experience the one, but we cannot connect it with the multiplicity of the world. So it's the same experience, but seen through the mental layer. Similarly, from the vital layer, we can see the one. There are ranges of mind from which we can see the one. But there is a difference. So we see in Sri Aurobindo that there is a supramental seeing, and therefore the same thing, even if something like the subtle physical, he reveals to us that plane in the context and the background of the infinite, which we will read as we proceed. But as you said, the role of the subtle physical, and we read that line, it fathers our reflexes. I think it was there, a few lines above. Yes, on page 106. Its sense fathers our body's reflexes. Now, this subtle physical envelope is like, it is the original blueprint, because the divine light, the perfection of form, the beauty is still retained in it. It's the robe of the spirit. But the moment it plunges into the inconscient, all that is lost. And then, because the memory is there, this too we'll read, it tries to reword and recreate a document. It's like a document which is handed over to someone in all its pristine purity. And the person either by mistake tears it and throws it, or it, falls in rainwater and it's smudged all over. Then you try to read what it really meant and try to put piecemeal together and eventually try to reconstitute a truth. So the human body, in the process of reconstituting the truth, the gross body, it creates many erroneous things. And it's known, one of the cause of aging and eventual death is that, all these cells, ideally it should not happen. Mother raises this question, why should these cells from beginning, they are programmed in such a beautiful way that they will, create the next cell and then die. So every cell which is created is a fresh cell, new cell. So why should there be death and old age? So it's very interesting that errors are introduced in the system. We are programmed for errors. And the beauty is nature uses that also. So there was a reason why this plunge took place. But yet there is a poise in the physical which is an error-free poise, the original blueprint. And it can always impose itself and correct the physical ailments. So this is one part. Second is that this subtle physical, all illnesses that come, or all forces actually, before they come, they touch through this layer, which, one can experience. One doesn't have to be really a yogi to experience it. Just a little more sensitive and refined, and one can experience this layer within oneself and others. It is what, is very often the cause of affinities, that, certain people just rub onto you. And with certain people, there is a kind of drawing together because this envelope matches. Now, this envelope is formed on one side by the thoughts and psychological condition, and on the other side by the physical constitution of matter. Take an example, if we are very tired, we may be very fine people and thoughts may be very beautiful, But when we are tired, the physical element which constitutes the subtle physical is not enough. The energy of the physical, the fire of the gross physical. So as a result, there are holes in it, and during that time, illness can invade us. So that's why the famous thing that if we are tired and feel exhausted, take rest. It's a very good advice because this envelope has to restore itself. It takes some time. On the other side, if the psychological condition is bad, and even though physically everything is fine, yet we may fall ill because again we have developed this punctured holes in it. So it's like an armor which we have, and something which we can reinforce, particularly if we can reinforce this armor with the Divine Mother's protection. She speaks about it that there is her white light. She says it can protect you against everything. Nothing can touch it. But some people had the penchant of even going out of that protection. So she speaks of that while I am protecting you all the time, don't deliberately go out of it. So otherwise, this subtle physical is enough to lead us through many things in life. So the divine has equipped us in many ways against the storms and turbulences of life. We are not as helpless as we believe ourselves to be. But probably we choose to be, probably we take a wrong attitude, a different turn, and that creates the problem. It's a vast subject, maybe, I am resisting the temptation to go into it. It'll take us into various aspects of the body consciousness, and it will come subsequently.
But these next pages are so beautiful.
And this is the beauty, that Sri Aurobindo, when he is speaking of subtle physical, he opens the door to the infinite.
Yes.
There is somewhere in the agenda, one of the note of the mother, we have windows opening to the infinite. But most human beings manage to keep them shut. So look how Sri Aurobindo uses this as a window to take us to something so profound. Thus taken was God's plunge into the night. So came up to subtle physical. We read that everything is beautiful, and then there is an attraction into the inconscient. What is that? And there is a plunge. Thus taken was God's plunge.
And we have seen that many times in Savitri.
Yes, many times.
The divine holocaust.
Yes. And then he will also reveal to us why. What was the deeper purpose? So that comes at different places. And now several places Sri Aurobindo has used interesting expressions for describing the world.
Yes.
We keep on saying illusion or, it's a veil of tears. But at one place Sri Aurobindo says, this universe is a vast gymnasium of his works of might. Now this, changes the whole thing. Like, we are at another place, it's a puzzle.
Yeah.
But here he uses a wonderful word. This fallen world became a nurse of souls.
A nurse of souls.
Its task is to nurse us, train us, to equip us. Inhabited by concealed divinity. So just as children go to a nursery, or plants are kept in a nursery, but there is the possibility of a blooming rose and huge trees, but they have to be initially dealt with in a different way.
Yes.
Thus they will grow. So this world gives us the experiences which act as feeder for this efflorescence. So it's a nurse of souls, where who dwells in this world? Concealed divinity. So how marvelous this expression is. A being woke and lived in the meaningless void. Now, again, like Sri Aurobindo is not saying it's a meaningless void, but as it appears to us, it's a meaningless void. A being woke and lived in the meaningless void. A worldwide Nescience strove towards life and thought. A consciousness plucked out from mindless sleep. The sleep of matter, from which consciousness wakes up, is awakened, aroused. There is another line, arousing consciousness in things inert.
Yes.
So there are various mechanisms in this world by which consciousness is aroused. And one of them, of course, is unfortunately pain. It awakens consciousness in things which are dull and stone-like. So consciousness plucked out. All here is driven by an insentient will. Thus fallen, inconscient, frustrate, dense, inert, sunk into inanimate and torpid drowse, earth lay, a drudge of sleep, forced to create by a subconscient yearning memory. How beautiful it is that on one side, everything, the very supreme will, has entered into a state of mechanical responses in the subconscient darkness. And yet, even through that mechanical responses, even in that darkness, there is still a memory which doesn't die. The other day we were speaking about the memory of everyday life, which becomes like a ghost in our heads. But the memory of the divine contact, in whatever way one has experienced, is enough to sustain one throughout one's life.
Yes.
Those who have received a psychic touch, for one moment one has glimpsed it. It will carry you through hundreds and thousands of trials and tribulations of life, because that is so concrete. You are forced to return again and again back onto that. So earth carries that memory, it carries that touch. That's why Mother has said, Sri Aurobindo's birth is an eternal birth. And one of them, she says, this birth will be remembered as long as earth lasts. This birth will be remembered. It will be imprinted.
And those points of contact with the divine, in the end, are the only true points.
Yes, absolutely. They are the only
nothing
true
else
points.
matters.
In civilizations, it happens. See, we go through a moment, and I was speaking the other day about the vision of the Gita, that, Mahabharata war, so much destruction, so much. We can't even imagine the carnage. Now we enjoy it as a serial. But frankly, what carnage would have taken place? Or the siege of Troy. And Sri Aurobindo describes that. Zeus sees, and mothers who are going to send their children to school don't know that they may not return. Their fathers are going to be dead. All this is going to happen. But at the end, what lasts? So it is the great vision on the battlefield of Kurukshetra and the message of the Gita. So ultimately, in civilizations also, it is these points where it heaved towards the light and felt a contact. And in individual life also, those moments. And that one carries. So it's a memory which cannot be destroyed. And it will return back again and again, because it's not embedded in matter. It's in a certain state of consciousness which is indestructible.
And this line, left from a happiness dead
Yes.
before she was born.
Yes. It's a marvelous line. Left from a happiness. So where is this memory come from? This happiness, as God was coming closer and closer.
Yes.
Even in the subtle physical, there is beauty of form. And all this is there. But before it could touch ground, it vanishes. It's coming, but it vanishes. But the memory is there. One has seen it, experienced it, felt it. And that lingers. It leaves its trace. It's a very powerful thing, even about very often people say this in context of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Oh, now they are not there. Now, of course, to the experiencing consciousness, they are there. But not leave aside that. The fact that the divine touches the earth, it stirs certain things in motion, and whether we like it or not, we will eventually awaken and reach that point which is intended. Because that will has gone into matter. It's not about physically they are present or not present. That can be left to each one's inner experience. But that will which has gone into matter, that is bound to bounce back and eventually bring its results. Now, who will become open and recipient to that will is a different matter. And then Sri Aurobindo gives such beautiful example. An alien wonder on her senseless breast. This mire must harbour the orchid and the rose. Here is an example. Those who doubt transformation, here is an example. If orchid and rose and lotus can bloom in the mud and mire, human beings are not that bad. Surely the supramental is very much in the offing. What a marvelous, people say Sri Aurobindo is very philosophical. Look at the practicality of it. That this mud must harbour, this mire must harbour the orchid and the rose. So obviously there is some beauty hidden. We don't know it. And that beauty springs forth, takes form. From her blind, unwilling substance must emerge a beauty that belongs to happier spheres. there is this beautiful story in the Indian context of one of the avatars, nursing avatar. So the story is that, he asked his son, you say God is everywhere? Yes, he is everywhere. In this pillar? In this pillar? He says, yes, in this pillar. Are you sure? This is blind, inert, brute. Yes, yes, my Hari is there. And he says, okay, let's check it out. And he breaks open the pillar. And out emerges of that pillar the nursing, half the lion man, the avatar of, that period. So essentially, this story points to that same thing, that even in blind, unconscious things, he is present. But we need the faith and the will of a Prahlad, the psychic. He represents the psychic. So if that is there, it will be compelled to emerge. In any case, that compulsion is there because that presence is there. This is the destiny bequeathed to her. One thing we have to be sure, that this is the destiny of earth.
Yes.
Million words will not eventually stifle it. It will eventually emerge. How much ever you may try to stifle it, how much ever you may try to strangulate it, you can delay it, but you cannot deny it. That's its right. And so many stories, even in Greek mythology, there are prince, even I think Perseus the deliverer. So same thing, destiny of Andromeda and Perseus. Perseus is destined to do something. And how much ever they try, even they tie Andromeda to the stake. But last minute something happens, the butcher changes his mind and and of course Perseus comes and things change. So, because that is the destiny and it will show itself. As if a slain god left a golden trust to a blind force and an imprisoned soul. I think earlier also I had alluded to this story of Sati. Sri Aurobindo has spoken of this story in one of his casual writings in Bande Mataram days. And we see glimpses of this story in the next 6 lines. As if a slain god left a golden trust to a blind force and an imprisoned soul. An immortal Godhead's perishable parts, she must reconstitute from fragments lost, reword from a document complete elsewhere, her doubtful title to her divine name. He has given the essence of this story, where Sati, who is the divine mother who has become ignorant nature, and eventually she becomes stone. That's how, all the places, 54 places where different parts of Sati are fallen all over across India. Actually, they may make the map of India in a certain sense. And every place, there is some part which has turned into stone. It's a very symbolic story. And yet there is, because of that act, there is aspiration in matter. And so once again she is reborn as Parvati, the goddess, born on the mountain heights, who must embody in herself all that force and should beyond. So this is the destiny of earth, and we have to fulfill it by each one finding its own divinity. At one place in context of nations, the mother says that each nation has a part to fulfill and a role to play. It represents something of the divine, but it has to find. Then only all these parts can come together. Yes. But to find it, we must find the center, which is the divine.
The word, the beauty of the word, when Sri Aurobindo uses reconstitute, reword, and then doubtful title to her divine name, the music. The music is so beautiful here.
Yes. This is me, that's it. A residue her soul inheritance. All things she carries in her shapeless dust. You see how profound a casual line can be. Yes. The dust of earth contains within itself the supreme and everything else that is in between. Yeah. We may treat it as dust, or we can use it to build computers, silicon, literally. Or we can worship it, put it on our foreheads and feel blessed by the touch of God. But the dust contains everything in it. shapeless dust. That's why from dust man has emerged. What greater miracle and the greater possibility that is bound to emerge. That's what Savitri says to death. If in the meaningless void creation arose, if sense could climb in nerve and branch and trees. So, all things she carries in her shapeless dust, all possibilities. Her giant energy tied to petty forms in the slow, tentative motion of her power, with only frail, blunt instruments for use, she has accepted as her nature's need and given to man as his stupendous work, a labor to the gods impossible. This is the reason why he accepts the fall, because there is a possibility and not all can do it. Gods are scared. There was a movie shown in the playground, this A Labor to the Gods Impossible. It reminds one of Kathoupnishad, and there was a movie shown in the playground where a lady is a sage's wife, Anusuya. Her husband is Atri Rishi. She can turn the three great gods of the great Trinity into babies. So when mother saw this film, she was very amused. She said, only human beings can do it. They don't know that they are greater than the gods. And then she made a very beautiful remark. Human beings can love this way because they have in them the psychic presence. Gods cannot love this way. She loves a man, and through that love, she has risen to such heights that even the gods become like babes upon her knees. And mother says only human beings can love this way because they have in them the psychic presence. So labor to the gods impossible.
Impossible.
So such a beautiful thing. We are here for this, not for petty things. A life living hardly in a field of death. We are given a life. But what is the field in which we are given to live? Field of death. Now create immortality. This is a challenge. And you see the Gita. The Gita is given the gospel of immortality when a dance of death is going on. Look at Christ's sacrifice. From the cross, where everybody must be thinking in that age, oh, we have done with him. But where is Rome's empire? Where are those who condemned him? But Christ's empire is extended everywhere. Look at the beauty of this, the power which, one wields. Paradox.
2,000 years.
Death immortalized him.
Yes.
2,000 years. Socrates with the hemlock.
Yes.
And imagine Socrates who would have escaped from the prison. He would have been like anyone else. So this is given to us to create immortally with mortal things. A life living hardly in a field of death. Its portion claims of immortality. And all of us, to an extent. The work of a poet, immortalized. Homer's body has died, but Homer's work remains. So Virgil's work, so the works of the Ramayana and Mahabharata, a lot of people have this debate. And I say, forget about debate. Just think about it in a very simple way. Imagine a story written some 10,000 years back. It still holds sway on the minds of people. There has to be something in it which is too powerful and magnetic.
Yes.
Harry Potter came like a wave and it's already ebbing. It caught the mind of imagination of people, but it's beginning to ebb. But look at this tale that it has carried the thought and mind and deeper sense of generations after generations after generations. And still when you watch it, there is something in it which you feel is your take-home point. So this is called immortality. Creating immortal things out of transient things. Perishable things. The paper, the pen, the ink, the human body, the brain, everything is gone. But this is an immortal creation. So that's what is given to us. A brute, half-conscious body serves as means. A mind that must recover a knowledge lost, held in stone grip by the world's inconscience. And wearing still these countless knots of law, A spirit bound, stand up as nature's king.
Knots of law.
Knots of law. Now you see, this is where even at one place Sri Aurobindo says that each step there stands a stone-eyed
Law. Yes. Yes.
Now look at this, that why Sri Aurobindo had to rewrite. We come back to that. Here is the explanation. When the avatar, even the Supreme, assumes a human body, he becomes subject to the laws. He can't just, in fact, that is the difference between an avatar and a traditional Siddha. Siddha goes above the law. He doesn't enter to change the law. He superimposes a higher law and uses it. Nothing changes here, but he uses it temporarily to keep it in shape. That's what a Siddha does, like Brahmanand living for 200, 300 years. So there is a state of consciousness which you can superimpose. But the avatar enters into the law, accepts it. So Perseus goes to the land of Syria. He has to face the possibility of persecution, of death. So then only the law can change. So when the divine assumes the human cloak, even for him, it's not easy that inspiration is coming and okay, my hand will write and my brain will allow. They don't transmit it easily. And Sri Aurobindo has used at one place a word called transmission errors.
Yes.
So it's not easy because they are not accommodating these parts. And Sri Aurobindo speaks about his own body vis-a-vis mother's body and says, he said that your body is much more prepared than mine.
Yeah.
So the moment you take it in grim earnest. And eventually that's why the process he used, a drastic process of course, where he sacrificed literally the physical to establish the supermind here. Because the physical was not accommodating. It would come, touch and go. Come, touch and go. So for the first time, the supramental descent took place. Now we are nearing 5th December.
Yes.
It was on the 5th December. That is the descent. And it stayed for 111 hours in matter. And then in 56, it was the manifestation. That's how the mother put it across. Which next year, couple of months from here.
Yes.
And then a new movement starts, that why the human soul can dare it. It's a daring adventure, a real adventure. Mother says that this yoga, people love adventure. Here is an adventure of adventures.
I invite you.
I invite you. And Sri Aurobindo's invitation. People who want to come to yoga, thinking that life will be easy, everything. What does Sri Aurobindo say? With the wind and the weather beating around me, up to the hill and the moorland I go. Who shall walk with me? Who shall come with me? And towards the end, what powerful lines. Of misadventure, I have made myself a friend. I made it a friend. Misadventures are so many that it's a friend. It comes unasked, walks in. And then he ends with these powerful lines. Stark must he be, and a kinsman to danger, who shares my kingdom and walks by my side.
Yes.
You see Christ's story, even among his closest ones, they couldn't. When they saw the burden of the cross, it was too much for them. They couldn't go near and try to do something because they couldn't bear it. It's so difficult. So, stark must he be and a kinsman to danger, who shares my kingdom and walks by my side. So, what gives man's spirit the strength? This daring's cause. All we attempt in this imperfect world looks forward or looks back beyond time's gloss to its pure idea and firm inviolate type in an absolute creation's flawless skill. Because we are playing in time, but something in us has that touch of the timeless. And it remembers. That's why, we forget to die. Because he is there, men forget to die. Because he is there, the inconscient does its work. Because he is there, the rose and the lotus bloom despite all the contradictions. Because He is there, the march of civilization goes on, and the stars drift in the sky. Because He is there, the sun again and again burns bright after the cloudy passages. So this is the beauty, that something in us knows it, looks beyond and behind time's gloss. And what do we find there? In an absolute creation's flawless skill, to seize the absolute in shapes that pass. How beautifully Sri Aurobindo, the play with transience.
Yes.
Why do we suffer? Because we want it to be absolute. We want it to be perfect. If we didn't want perfection in life, well, we won't suffer. Probably we would accept it just as it is. But we want things to be perfect. We dream of perfection. We intuitively believe it should be perfect. That's why we raise questions. And why not? Because it has come down from the perfect. To fix the eternal's touch in time-made things. This is the law of all perfection here. This law of perfection is a law of evolution inspired by a perfection which is within and above.
This line, to fix the eternal's touch in time-made things, years and years before, the line was to feel the eternal's touch in time-made things. So I questioned the people in the archives, and I said, we've lived with this line, to feel the eternal's touch. And it took 3 years. And Richard brought me one day, and I had 34 questions. And he showed me how Sri Aurobindo changed and how it went along. And indeed, the last change was from feel to fix.
Wow, amazing. So meaningful.
To fix.
It's not enough to feel.
No.
It should be imprinted, embossed.
Yes.
It should be shaped in that image.
Yeah.
And they have done it in many ways. The other day, I'm just sharing something very personal. Something which is a blessing packet touched by the mother. There are some blessing packets like that. And of course, it was dear friend Mandeep's birthday, and someone gave this blessing packet, and it's amazing that holding it in the hand, there were 3 of us, and all 3 of us suddenly felt the impact so strong. We are transported into something very different. And it was very difficult to step out of that. Now imagine when the mother would have touched it, we have no idea. But it's there. You just have to be little open and receptive. Or a moment she seizes. Actually, we were in for a shock. We didn't know it's going to be so powerful. And okay, if one person experiences. All the 3 simultaneously experienced. One person was holding the packet. And 3 of us simultaneously experienced. Now look at this touch. Fixed.
You weren't holding the package.
I was holding the packet. But everyone, somebody gave, all 3 of us had touched it. But I was the last one holding the packet, and I didn't know what to do. We were all transfixed. So, with great effort, we had to, and some phone came. So, always there are disturbers on the, maybe it was too much for us. But imagine, that what it means. This is just one small practical example. What it means to fix.
Yes.
How they fix that touch.
Yes.
We have to just, receive it. If fragment here is caught of heaven's design, else could we never hope for greater life, and ecstasy and glory could not be. So this is the daring's cause. It comes, it has touched, it is there within, behind, around, above. That's why it's possible. And last few lines which are very full of hope. Even in the littleness of our mortal state. Because this also we say, all this is very fine, high philosophy. But look at human beings, mortal, wisp of the will. bubble on time sea. So Sri Aurobindo says, wait, hold on. Don't say half truth. Whenever people say such things, we should always remind. There is a line in Savitri, when death tells Savitri, oh, all this love and talk about all this, don't, there is nothing, this is all craving of the flesh. There is nothing like an ideal love and flawless happiness upon earth. So Savitri says, O death, thou speakest the truth, but the truth that slays.
Yes.
Now hear from me the truth that saves.
Yeah.
So here is the saving truth.
And then
Even
he tells her to that she says, I am, I know.
yes.
And he says, no, he says, no, also.
Also.
And knowing thou shalt cease to live
Yeah.
and cease to love, delivered from thy heart.
And then she
And
says, when I have loved all, then I shall know.
When I have loved forever,
Yes.
I shall know.
No. Very
love,
powerful.
Love in me knows the truth,
Yeah.
all changing's mask.
mask. Beautiful it is. So we see here that even in this littleness, yes, it's true. Our life is small in scale and pitch and measure. And it's also true that we are mortal, vulnerable. Yet there is a greater truth. Even in this prison house of outer form, a brilliant passage for the infallible flame is driven through gross walls of nerve and brain. Even in that, people who have, even that story of Mr. Nair, who was president of Singapore,
Devan
Nair, who is standing in the queue and he thought, well, nice place. What shall I tell mother when I see her? I'll tell her, good job, lady, you have done a wonderful thing. That's all. He said, I don't know, but what they say, divine and all, but yes, it's nice, good ashram, well kept, organized. Suddenly when he goes, the infallible flame must have leapt through brain and nerve and everything. And says, I forgot everything, just put my head in her lap. And that was the end of the story. She said nothing. And I forgot everything. So even in this, and this is the state of humanity, so many instances of people going to Mother and Sri Aurobindo, and suddenly, something from within leaps out. And that does it. A splendor presses or a power breaks through. Earth's great dull barrier is removed a while. The inconscient seal is lifted from our eyes and we grow vessels of creative might. In spite of all this, that is the hope. The enthusiasm of a divine surprise. This is something very beautiful.
Oh,
Divine surprise. And this, at least personally, at least for me, it's like encounters with Mother and Sri Aurobindo. First time when I had the secret of the Vedas in my hand, it was like a divine surprise. I was feeling uplifted above. I said, my God, wonderful. And of course, the Synthesis of Yoga. Both books I received the same day. Synthesis would become a constant companion. But the secret of the Vedas, I said, my God, this is it. How come I didn't know? What a divine surprise. Then vision of the mother, divine surprise. And then coming to Pondicherry, oh my God, this is it. And it was very interesting, just as an aside. Actually, I got down, myself and my wife, we got down at the bus stand, 3:30. We thought we'll come to the ashram. And suddenly an auto rickshaw came and said, Auroville. We didn't know the difference. We said, okay. To top it, he said, Matri Mandir. We said, surely bang on, we are at the right place. Mandir sounded very familiar. And he dropped us sure at Matri Mandir and we were wondering, where is the Mandir? Till we saw like a priest, a French man, dressed only with a knicker, running and, so you have come to something he asked us. Yes. So we were stranded on the road. He told us this is Matri Mandir and we are wondering maybe something in construction. But it was a nice feel. Auroville, you have a lovely feel. And we went to guest house and all this, came back. And then people asked us, so how was the ashram? We said, wonderful. We had no clue. And with my stupid brain, which was so much against human forms, because I believed, no, divine is everywhere in everything. You don't have to go to a guru and he is a human being. You can also, all these stupid thoughts, modern age and young man, 22, 23, all these agnostic, leaping suddenly, too much of vision. So people said, oh, very nice. So how was the dining room food now? We thought dining room food means so-and-so food. So we said, yes, very nice. Sent a guest house we were staying and everything was wonderful. Then, divine had to show me my folly. So I said, and what is the best part? That there is nothing religious about the place. Not even a samadhi of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. The person said, what? Where did you go? I said, the ashram, of course. And it was so nice. They don't even have a samadhi of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. They said, I was not ready, obviously. Then they said, surely you have. Then I discovered it was Auroville. But I didn't feel I missed anything. I said, it was wonderful. Till next time, circumstances made sure that I reached there. And when I saw the samadhi and put my head there, I said, my God, I missed this. And I was feeling very happy. Nothing is worth it. This is it. So this was the enthusiasm of a divine surprise. It was literally a divine surprise for me that, he made me aware of my deep folly, but in such a beautiful way, playfully. Probably if I would have come first, I don't know what would have been the reaction. The enthusiasm of a divine surprise pervades our life. A mystic stir is felt. So often, casual things, suddenly you get, mother's touch, a glimpse, a suggestion, an indication. And you wonder, oh my God, how beautiful. Everywhere she is there, the universal teacher, the universal mother, upholds us and reveals something to us. Last 3 lines.
Yeah.
A joyful anguish trembles in our limbs. A dream of beauty dances through the heart. A thought from the eternal mind draws near. Intimations cast from the invisible, awaking from infinity sleep come down, symbols of that which never yet was made.
Sri Aurobindo capitalizes that.
Yes, that. Symbols of that which never yet was
was made.